Are you depressed? Or do you know somebody who's depressed? And do you want to be healed naturally? Well, if so, watch this video. Depression affects approximately 5% of the world's population at any one time. It's fair to say that most human beings will be depressed at some stage during their life, and depression is something that we have to deal with. Sadly, most people are depressed when they go to their doctor, they're giving drugs, and that's pretty much it, and often they're left on those drugs for life, which is far from being an ideal situation. So how can we get off of the drugs? How can we heal naturally? Well, in this video we're going to look at 5 steps, a 5-step strategic process for getting off of the drugs. Now, this is not a cookie cutter video. It's not a get healed quick video. It's just the approach that I feel in the long term will create long-term healing, okay? So what normally happens when a person is depressed is they are given a course. If you're depressed for more than 3 weeks, apparently you're clinically depressed according to the DMV-5, and then they usually will put you on the antidepressants for a few months. Then they'll see if they can wind off, fine. If not, they stick you on them often for life. But what you have to understand about antidepressants is that antidepressants are not the cure, they are a treatment. Just like high blood pressure pills are treatment for a high blood pressure patient, they don't cure high blood pressure. Just like diabetic pills do not cure the diabetic, they simply treat the diabetes. So too, the antidepressant does not cure you, it treats you. Now, how do you get off the antidepressants? You have to first understand why a person is depressed. And basically what causes depression is a mixture of negative thoughts and feelings combined with some negative events. And then it triggers a depression. Okay? I'll go into this in more detail in another video. But what are the 5 basic strategic paths which will create long-term healing? Well, I did a video recently called How to Overcome Trauma. And it's basically those 4 points plus an extra point. Those 4 points were working on yourself, like psychotherapy, group therapy, self-development courses, self-development books. Number 2 was life story. So things like diary writing, learning about the things that you say to yourself, the myths that you believe, the programming, basically the programming that was put into your brain as a child. Understanding the events that took place in your life and how you put them together as a life story. The third area is then when you get that information, you can reflect upon it, and the fourth is that you integrate it. The idea with trauma is that a trauma impacts your life, okay? We've heard this saying, for example, the elephant in the living room. Well, this is exactly what a trauma is. Like an elephant in the living room, but people tend to deny it. They try and walk around it. It's very hard to get around an elephant. So first of all, we have to find out what's in the living room. That's basically working out what our life story is, what's happened to us, what perspectives and judgments we've made about what thoughts we have about that, what feelings we have about that, and working through it, reflecting upon it, and then integrating it. And if you want more detail, go to the video, because I don't want to get too much into those details. This is an overview video. And if you want a lot more details in those 4 steps, which is working on yourself, life story, self-reflection, and integration, please take a look at that video. I'll link it here somewhere. But the key thing is that what tends to happen is people, they want to go back to where they began. So basically, if this is time, birth, death, you're here somewhere, you can't go back, but people want to go back. So there's a tendency to deny what's happening. There's a tendency to seek to go backwards, but you can't. So you have to go through, and that's why you have to find out what the issues are, work through the issues, reflect and integrate. That's how you deal with traumas in life. And when I say traumas, a trauma could be anything in your psychic reality. Your psychic reality is how you perceive life. So you could be in a very nice life, never have anything externally traumatic, but you feel traumatized for one or other reasons. And this is causing a problem, an issue in your life. So this is basically, in a nutshell, how we get through traumas. Now, the one extra factor in depression, the factor 5, so we've had that, learning about yourself, life story, self-reflection, integration, and the 5th one is the inner critic. The inner critic is the bad guy in the story. And I'm going to devote the rest of this video about overviewing the inner critic, and I will add another video soon where we talk about tactics for overcoming the inner critic. But I don't want to go off too much into that detail in one video. Okay, so this is, like I said, an overview video, the 5-step process, and it works, but it takes time. Okay, it's up to you. You can take drugs for the rest of your life, or you can get off drugs, but to get off drugs will take time and effort. So basically the way it works is early in life you develop a thing called the inner critic. The inner critic there's a good side and a bad side. The good side is conscience. The bad side is the inner critic. And it happens basically arbitrarily. So what really happens is, early in life, people around you, usually your parents and siblings and elders and teachers and so on, tell you what to do, what not to do. So you go to grab the saucepan, they say, don't grab the saucepan, because you boil it yourself with water. You go to run out in the street, don't run out in the street. Okay? You go first day in school, what's the teacher say? Because you're jumping up and down like a monkey, sit down. Okay, you're very cross as well. Sit down. So we have these adults who are like, they're 2 or 3 times our size, and they're very authoritative. And we just take whatever they say as the law, the rule. And over time, we have a process we call interjection. We interject, you just absorb what they say, and that becomes like a subpersonality in your subconscious mind. In case you don't know what the subconscious mind is, you are now conscious, but your subconscious mind is like your dream mind, the part of the mind that drives your car to work, that brush your teeth, all that sort of stuff. That's in your subconscious mind. And so the subconscious mind takes on subpersonalities, and that subpersonality is the conscience and also the inner critic. And as a conscience, it says, don't rob the pen from the other kid. How would you feel if they robbed your pen? Okay? And it will either come in your voice in the first person or the second person. So if it comes as the second person, you wouldn't want to, if that happened, you wouldn't want that person to rob your pen, would you? If it comes the first person, I wouldn't want them to rob my pen, now would I? It can come as either voice. That's basically subpersonality. It does things like stopping us from breaking rules, like speeding, or maybe being insensitive to other people, or theft, and or being nasty. So the conscience is a very good thing. But the flip side is the inner critic, and the inner critic is, you're bad, you're stupid, you can't do it. Or, I'm bad, I'm stupid, I can't do it. Okay? It can be either or. So, what happens in depression is you have negative thoughts and feelings built up through your lifetime, your early life programming, okay, combined with external negative events. And because of those little mini traumas or negative events over time, they result in you reflecting upon that experience with your programming. So say, for example, you're unlucky in love. You come away thinking, it always happens with me. I can't find the right partner, or I can't hold on to the wrong partner, or it'll never happen to me. Say in business, I'm always a failure. I can't be a success. Say studies like maths, I'm useless at maths. I can never do maths. Okay? Friendships, I can never get any good friends, or all my friends let me down, or everybody cheats on me. Okay? So what happens is you have the negative programming, which is early life experiences with early life traumas, and early life negative thoughts, which could be negative thoughts that you have because of the little traumas and disappointments you had early in life, or also perhaps your family programming, the way your family thinks, no good things can happen to us, we're always failures, this always happens to me, this always happens to us. Okay, this kind of thing. Plus you have the real objectives, you have real objective events of disappointment, which happen to every human being. But then you also have subjective thoughts about that, which are just subjective judgments, and subjective judgment results in a subjective feeling. Now, of course, the more those negative events happen, the more it reinforces. The more time you fail a maths test, the more you become convinced you can't do maths. The more time you go for a swimming lesson and you still can't swim, the more you're convinced you can't swim. The more times you go to do your driving test and you fail it, the more you become convinced you're going to fail it. So we have these cases where most people will pass the driving test within the first or third test. And if they fail the third test, it's not uncommon to have them doing 10, 15, 20, 30 sometimes, because they're now believing they can't do it, okay? So negative events, negative thinking, partly because of response to the events and partly because of early life programming, are building up negative thoughts and feelings, plus the inner critic. And for a whole wide variety of reasons, some of which we can kind of make sense of, and some of which we're not sure why, because genetics might come into play, environment come into play, whatever it is, one fine day the inner critic goes bananas. And the way I would see it, or the analogy would be like, have you ever had a situation, say on your laptop or your computer, where you click something a few times and next thing 50 tabs come up and your whole computer crashes and you're trying to close tab after tab after tab? That's like the inner critic. It starts throwing criticism. You're useless, you're crap, you can't do it, you're a failure, you're useless, you're blah, 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 blah. Now, it might come up consciously, either in the first or second person, you're useless or I'm useless. Or in many cases, a person might have a conscious positive dialogue, but subconsciously the negativity is still there. How do I know the negativity is still there? Because if it was just feeling bad, if it was just feeling lousy, you just feel lousy. But no, it's punitive, it's oppressive. It's like trying to get out of bed is difficult, trying to do anything. It's like there's like, you know, inside you're punctured, you're sucked within and you can't get outside. There's a wall outside. It's oppressive. Depression is oppression. So what the inner critic is doing, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, is you can't do it, or I can't do it. It's not possible. The depression is never going to go away. It's always going to be like this. When's it going to come back? Blah, 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 blah. You're terrible. You can't do anything. It's going to go on like this forever. Oh, it's this very negative oppression. It's the inner critic gone to overdrive. Whether you're consciously aware of it or not, that's what depression actually is. The inner critic gone into overdrive. The inner critic has its use as a conscience, but this negative, punitive criticism is actually what holds us back in depression. So this oppression. Now, if you can imagine that you have a dial over here in severe depressions 10, back to normal is maybe 3 or 4, or maybe for a lot of people might be a 5 or 6 because they're always self-critical. Well, you go back to your 10 again, you feel awful. Okay? But imagine if you could take the 10 and it becomes an 8, and your baseline of 6 becomes a 5. And next time you get depressed, your 8 becomes a 7, and your set point becomes a 4, and eventually you get to a stage where your normal level is a 2, and your maximum depression stage is only a 6.5. So depression will either go away, or it will be minor. You'll be able to get on with your life, which is very, very important. And that's what's possible when you reduce the inner critic. Because once you take that oppression away, you're just left with negative thoughts and feelings, which are life issues, which you need to go and learn about your life, learn about the different hurts you have in your life, reflect upon what's happened, make sense of it, reflection, and then work through it, integration. Okay? Awareness, reflection, integration. But first of all, we have to remove the boulder, or the thing that's holding us down, which is the oppression. The oppression is like somebody standing on your chest. That's the inner critic. In the next video, I'll go into detail about the inner critic. I want to keep this video simple because I'm trying to make a point here, which is not often seen. If you look at most videos on depression on YouTube, they tell you to go for a walk or eat vegetables or something. If you go to your doctor, usually throw drugs at you. You might, if you're lucky, get some therapy in. But they're missing the point of what's causing the depression. And there might be genetic precursors as to why some people get depressed and other people don't, and I understand that. And of course, some people are very traumatized and so on. But as far as I can see, and I think I'm pretty much on the ball here, is that it is a mixture of negative experiences combined with judgments, which create feelings, which create a buildup of negative thoughts and feelings, and then the cherry on the cake is the inner critic. The major thing is once you reduce the inner critic, the oppression goes down, and then you're just left with a lot of shit to deal with. And you got to get your shovel out and start cleaning up. That's ultimately what it's about. So, the 5-step process for healing yourself naturally with medication is work on yourself, find out what your life story is, reflect about it, integrate it, and reduce the inner critic. That's the 5-step process. It's not quick. It's going to take anywhere from months to years. But each time you get depressed from now on, if you do this, it will become less. Can you be cured of depression? I think in many cases you can be cured of depression, or at least it can become not so bad. Can you get rid of drugs? For most of you, yes, you can get rid of drugs, or at least reduce the drugs a lot. Remember, the drugs are just there to reduce the symptoms. They're not there to cure you. Depression is almost seen as a way of life today. It's like, it's raining. There's nothing I can do about rain. But you can do something about depression. It is a curable condition. It's not even a disease. It's a state of mind. It's a state of dis-ease. You can work through it, but the only way you can long-term cure yourself, or at least radically improve your depression and find a natural way out of it, is by working through the issues. Reducing the self-criticism, cleaning out the debris, cleaning out the shit, cleaning out the rubbish, cleaning everything up, boosting yourself over time. That's it. I don't know if you want to hear that or not, but I'm frankly telling you what it is. So please tune into the next video. We'll look at the inner critic and how to defuse the inner critic and do the cleanup process and get back on with your life. Okay? I hope you find it helpful, and we'll talk to you again next time.